right. Well, welcome back to another edition of Inside BBI with John and Eric. I'm John McDevitt. Of course, with me, senior editor of Big Blue Interactive, Mr. Eric Kennedy. And joining us right now is former New York Giant, Mr. Rich Seubert. Rich, first off, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it. You are a fan favorite from back in the heyday of when we were actually good.
Hey, John and Eric, glad to be on with you guys. What can I say? I love the Giants. I love playing here. I love the fans, and I played for my family. I played for you guys. It was fun to be out there playing for 10 years.
10 years. That's something. Yeah, that's actually one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, so you had a 10-year career and it's a bit of a roller coaster, and we'll get into that because of the injury. But one of the things I've always wondered about is, so you started 88 regular season games, 7 playoff games. Do you vividly remember all of those games, or is it a blur? I mean, I know there are those special games, but going season by season, is that something you can remember your opponent and you can remember what happened, or it's just a blur to you?
It's more of a blur, right? I can remember bits and pieces of each season. I know there's guys I played with that can pretty much tell you every game they played in and what year it was, what day it was. But I truly believe I was a week-to-week kind of guy where after Sunday, you have to forget about the game you played and you have to get ready for the next week. And I think once you put it out of your mind like that, I think it's hard to go back and remember everything that happened. I can probably tell you my bad plays. Like the worst of the worst you remember, the best of the best is hard to remember, right? Plays you messed up, or the plays you got beat on, or the holding call you had, or the sack you gave up, right? Those seem to stick a lot longer than the good games or the good plays that you had.
No, that's interesting.
Well, I was thinking, and with you just saying that, that's the difference between a guy who ultimately makes it and the guy who doesn't. It's when those bad things, I think for any of us in any career that we're in, that thing that didn't work the way you wanted to drives you to do better, drives you to do more. And I think that's just a testament to you as a person and you as the player for the Giants. That epitomizes exactly what your career was. A guy who just, and if it was bad, I'm going to work even harder to overcome that.
I think that's the way football is meant to be, right? You don't want to let anybody down. And when you say anybody, you first start with your teammates that are lined up next to you, and then everybody else on your team, your coaches, the management, the owners, the people that make your lunch. Everybody in that Giants building cared about the team. And then you look at all the fans. Obviously, you want to prove to everyone that you could be out there and do well. I'm not going to lie. I took a lot of motivation from, it's probably your guys' website, right? Talking smack about the offense. Myself in general, right? Tidbits from reporters or from the websites out there, right? I think my career in general, I was the underdog. I went to a 1AA school in Western Illinois, went to a small Catholic school in Wisconsin. People told me I was crazy. Like, oh, you're never going to play in college. You're never going to play in the NFL. You're never going to have a good career. You're never going to win a Super Bowl. And it's just, you just want to keep proving people wrong. You have that chip on your shoulder. And I truly love playing. I love playing with, I could probably name every one of my offensive linemen that I played with. And if I start naming them, I'm going to forget one. But, first start with Luke, Pettigrew to my left. And, Bulber was my center, and Dusty Ziegler and Rosenthal and Whittle. And then he got to my second group of guys with David and Sean and Chris and Kareem and that whole group at Boothie, right? We had a special room. We truly enjoyed each other. We worked well together. You don't have to be the best player in the league. You just have to be the best group in the league. And I think we were groups for a few years of our career together.
Well, you're setting me up beautifully here, because one of the questions I had for you too is I had the pleasure in your rookie season of interviewing your offensive line coach at the time, Jim McNally. And it was back at a time where they let people sit down one-on-one with the coaches and the players. So I had a real honest discussion with him. Your name came up as a rookie, which was interesting. But one of the questions I asked him, I said, what drives you crazy when you hear fans say something publicly about the offensive line? What bothers you? And I won't read you the full quote, but he basically said, there are so many things that can go wrong on a play, and they always blame a sack or a quarterback hit on the offensive line. And he went through the whole, what could go wrong. It was a beautiful answer. So the question I had for you is, you've been on these message boards, and I've always wanted to ask this question to any football player ever. What drives you nuts? What makes you roll your eyes when you hear a fan say something and you say you just don't get it or you don't know what you're talking about?
Good question. I loved Coach McNally, Mouse, as we called him. You know, I got to talk about my coaches a minute, right? I had Jim McNally and Coach Pat Flaherty as my offensive line coaches, right? So I think I was pretty blessed with having probably two of the best guys in the business, right? Came in as a young guy with McNally. He always said, "I found you," right? He found me out of Western Illinois, gave me an opportunity. I love that guy. And then Coach Flaherty came in my third or fourth year and kind of took me out through the rest of my career. So I was lucky to have two guys that knew their shit. And so back to your question about what we think about people not knowing football or not. It's not about not knowing football, right? It's about knowing the play.
Right.
Well,
it could be both.
Like David Deal could have got beat inside and give up a sack, fumble, or a pick or something. You know what I mean? Was the reason why Eli had a bad pass. But I was supposed to be on his inside hip, and I wasn't there in that play. If Sean, right? Let's make some fun of O'Hare a little bit. Maybe instead of Harris sliding left, he decided to slide right. I get beat inside. I think Sean's there. He's not there. I think I have help. I look like shit, but it was really Sean's mistake and not mine, or my mistake and not Sean's. So unless you know the play, like you got these guys grading out these players. Right? Like you see it, I see it on Twitter and other stuff where like so-and-so, is grading out at 89% pass blocking or, I don't know how they rank offensive linemen if they don't know the play being called.
Right.
Because every play is so entrenched in detail, right? Maybe sometimes the coach called a bad play, right? They're not off the hook either. Maybe they called a bad play. They put me in a bad situation. I can't get to the Mike linebacker because he's plussed over too far.
Right.
Right. Or maybe I didn't help Sean enough on a nose guard, and it looks like Sean got beat, but it was actually my fault. So I graded out high on that play in your mind, but in my coach's mind, I'm the one that messed up, and Sean did fine. So I think it's hard to judge without knowing everything about that play and what was supposed to happen.
Yeah, I was brought to my attention by a guy I think you played for. Greg Tamella's father emailed me back in 2001 and said, "You don't know what you're talking. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what happened on that play." And again, I believe his father also played football too. So it was really sort of an eye opener to me, for me as someone who runs a website, because I'm just a fan. And like you said, we're trying to understand what's happening on the field, but always got to remember, again, we don't really know. And I think what you're getting at is like the PFF grades that are out there. I've said the same thing. How do they know what broke down or what didn't break down on a play? That's always been bizarre to me.
But I don't hold it against you fans for doing it, right? Like you writing message boards and stuff. Like that's part of the game. Like that's us as players. Like we have to deal with it. Like if we get our ass beat, own up to it, right?
Yeah.
But it also, like this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Right? That's I liked it, right? I like reading that stuff. And my parents, on the other hand, they might take it too seriously. Guys are not everything online is true, right? But it's part of the game, right? We're professional athletes and we have to deal with it. And I think it's easier to tell if a guy's playing lazy or not playing hard than if they know what they're doing correctly by technique wise, right?
Right.
So I think it's easy to pick out on tape where if a guy just gets beat cold handedly because he's not going hard or not giving 100% effort. I think it's pretty easy to see effort on tape and effort watching TV on Sundays. And when some guys shut it down, at the end of the season or the game's out of hand and they're just not giving a shit, I think that's easy to see now, right? It's probably easy to see when I played too.
Right.
But I think grading guys on plays is tough because you have to know the play.
Well, I think one of the reasons why the fans loved you, it wasn't just the injury, which we'll get into. I know everyone always asks about that, but even before that happened, the style that you played with, everybody really appreciated the physicalness. It looked like the game mattered to you and that you were protecting your guys, and that it just came across through the screen, and we love that about the style of play. So when we did all these ranking of the best Giants offensive linemen in team history. Your name always comes up just because you're a tough, you were a tough guy who played the game the way the fans love to see their offensive linemen play, and you were good, and you were good. So one of the questions I had, and I know John, I jump in here too, because I know but when you came out of Western Illinois, I had to look this up because you have a great college named the Leathernecks, which is also sounds tough. I think if I heard you correctly, you said McNally sort of saw you. So you go from that school to a team that's coming off a Super Bowl appearance. Was that, I mean, how did you adjust to that? Was that a hard adjustment? Did that blow your mind at the time, or was that something that you just took in stride and it came easy to you?
It was hard. I don't think you're not going to say it's easy. The speed of the game is totally different from where I was playing to the NFL. It came down after the draft, and there was like 3 or 4 teams in the mix for a free agent contract or free agent tryout, whatever they were called back then. And it's funny, McNally actually called me on Sunday morning during the draft, and he says, "Listen, we're not drafting you, but after the draft, we'd like an opportunity to bring you in for our rookie minicamp." And I said, "Thanks, coach." I didn't know who McNally was, but I looked him up, obviously. And my brother-in-law, who married my obvious sister, was living in Wisconsin at the time, and he's a New Yorker. He lived up by the Tappan Zee Bridge, a huge Giants fan, right? So when he heard the 3 options and the New York Giants were one of them, he's like, "You got to go to New York. Like, why wouldn't you go to New York?" And I pretty much told my agent, I'm like, "Looks like I'm going to New York." But it was because McNally didn't lie to me. The other teams were saying, "Hey, we got a couple picks coming up in the 7th. You know, your name might be on one of them." McNally called me up and he was straight ass honest. "We're not picking you, but we want to bring you in." And he looked at the roster. They had Lomas Brown playing left tackle and Glenn Parker and Dusty,
Yeah.
Ron Stone at right guard, and Rosie, right? Right tackle at the time.
Right tackle. Yep. Yep.
So it was, those guys are awesome, but you knew they were getting towards the end of their careers. Like 3 of them at least, with Glenn Parker, who taught me a lot my rookie year, and Ronnie Stone, who taught me a shit ton well. So he looked at the roster, looked at who they had coming back, and I think I can make the team, right? So when I came to New York, I didn't know anybody. Kenny Holmes was the big defensive end they signed that year. And it was 1-on-1 pass pro, and I was playing right tackle because they just stick you at a position, pretty much 3rd team right tackle. You're not going to make the squad, but we just need to fill the team for preseason. But I did all right against Kenny during the 1-on-1s, and I think the coaches saw that, and McNally got excited. And the backup right guard or left guard, the last preseason game, hurt his hand, and I started against Baltimore that last preseason game, and they had their one defense in there. Our starters did not play because Fossil didn't play the starters the last game, so I got to start that preseason game, and I must have played all right because I made the team. So my opportunity was the backup guard hurting his hand, moving me from right tackle to left guard. And I told Mouse, I was like, "Sure, I'll play guard." Like, why would you say no to that, right? Now some guy saying, "Oh, I'm a tackle. I don't play the left side." Or, "I'm on the left side. I can't play the right side." I'm like, "Shit, you better play everything." So I played, and I always said, thank God I didn't play my rookie year too much, right? I was on a couple special teams. I didn't get any offensive line reps because I think if I would have played my rookie year, I would have been cut my second year because I wasn't ready. I think it's hard at any position, but I think up front, like if you need a year to learn it. I think I see these rookies come in. I don't care if you're a 1st-round pick or from a big school or small school. It's a big learning adjustment, the speed, the game, the calls, everything you got to know. I always said by your 3rd or 4th year, you kind of understand the offense and you can actually play football without thinking. So I'm glad I had the 1st year kind of learn behind those guys. And then the 2nd year I ended up starting, right, and playing with a young offensive line group that started playing pretty good football at the end of the season.
So one question I want to continue on the path, but I want to ask you something because you said it in a way that it comes up often, and I'm curious on your thoughts. A lot of people pigeonhole a guy. He's a right guard. He can't play left. He's right guard. What is the big difference between if I'm a right guard and I'm moving over to left, other than maybe my hand placement, things like that? What is the big difference of right to left that why some people think he's just pigeoned here? What is the big difference on playing either side?
I think it's just your stance, right? Your right hand down, your left hand down. I know the year I was coming back from breaking my leg, I believe. Obviously, it was that. I was like playing tight end, and I was the backup guy coming in the inside. And I think we were playing, I forgot who we were playing, but it might have been Carolina or something. but Snee or somebody got hurt right before 2 minutes. I had to play right guard, and that was my first time ever playing on the right side of the line, which was weird, but you do it, right? Like you're a professional, like you get reps in practice. I was always one of those guys where I just want to be in the field. I don't give a shit what position they put me at, right? Like you want to play. I don't care what level of football you're doing. Like playing the game of football is one of the greatest things in the world, and I wanted to play, and the coach told me to play cornerback. I'll go find a way to do it, but I knew I couldn't do it. But I'd play right, left, center. It didn't matter. I just wanted to play football.
Well, I'm gonna come back to the tight end thing because I have
Yeah,
something
that
I
was
want
one
to
of your
ask about
questions.
that. But
Yeah.
I do want to shift back to 2002 real quick. When you go back to that playoff game and the field goal attempt, where ultimately you're now running down the field and you are interfered with in the end zone. What are your thoughts back to that moment, that whole play, everything that happened, and the fact that the NFL admitted they made a mistake calling you as ineligible, that actually Tam Hopkins was ineligible, but that you were interfered with? What are your thoughts on the play and how the NFL handled it after the fact?
I can't get fined anymore, so I think the refs threw the pooch on that one. I reported every play when I played tight end, and we practiced it in practice, and I was probably overboard by doing it, right, to make sure they knew I was eligible, and you never want that situation to happen. But I got literally tackled by the horse collar, right? He grabbed me by the inside collar on
Yeah.
the yard line. I knew I was pass interfered with, so I thought when they threw the flag, I thought they were going to call it and we're going to re-kick it and win the game, right? And then
We all did.
they ran up the field and said illegal man downfield, and I was like, what the like? But I wish he would have led me more in the end zone, because like if I would have caught that at the 5, like he might have tackled me, but maybe not, right? Maybe I would have been David Tyree before Tyree's helmet catch.
Nice.
But staying up,
it never came down to that play, right? And I tell,
Right.
and now I'm coaching in high school, and I talk to my kids about the different plays in the game that matter. Like there's not just one play that's decides the game, right? We were up, like that game was horrible and do it, but we should have taken care of business way before that play even happened. So
Sure.
but yeah, it sucked, right? The referees come out the next day and said, they made a mistake, blah blah blah. But there was never any accountability with the refs, anyways, right? It's not like they find the refs. If I make a mistake and I leg wave somebody, they take $7,000 of my money. But if the refs make a mistake, they get a pat on the ass and say, do better next time.
Right. Right.
Aside from that play, though, that was a fun year. I mean, you started all 16 games, regular season games in the playoff game. So you went from backup rookie to entrenched starter. And that offense was, I think, was 6th in the NFL. And Toomer was in his prime. Kerry Collins was winging the ball. Shockey's rookie year. Tiki Barber's running the. You must take a lot of pride in that year overall, aside from that playoff game, because you guys were putting up a lot of points, especially as the year progressed. By the end of the year, you guys were lighting it up.
It was a fun year. We got, I think towards the end of the year, our offense was clicking. We were scoring points at the end of it. I remember the first game we played Thursday night against San Fran, and then the last game we played at San Fran, right?
Right.
So I just remember their 2 D tackles are good, right? Dana Stubblefield and Brian Young.
Yep.
So after the first game, I'm like, if that's the best this league has to offer, I think I could do this. But then the playoff game, they cranked it up about 9 notches. I was like, ooh, they're pretty good. I was like, they're yeah. I remember going to Indy, right, the week prior, before the playoffs started. We had to beat Indy at Indy, and we scored, I don't know how many points, but 2 big games.
Yep.
The seasons always go quick, and now that I'm old, you can look back and you always say, what if, right?
Right.
Like, what if that game doesn't end the way it does? Like, that could have been another run at the Super Bowl. And you never know when your opportunities are going to come, and kind of let one slip by, and it still kind of pisses me off talking about it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I'm sorry, John.
No. Go ahead. You're fine.
Oh, I was just going to, and it brings us to 2003, which I think was very surprising to us, how the Giants fell that year. But you personally, every Giants fan out there who was a fan at that time was just devastated when you got hurt. And at the time, I didn't even know what the heck a spiral fracture was. I was like, I never even heard of that before. And the more I heard, and the more what I had read about what you had to go through, I thought, oh my goodness, is he ever even going to play again? I mean, did that go through your head at all during that time?
No, it never did. at the time I had a wife that loved me, and she still does, obviously, but put up for she probably had more to deal with than I did over those few months of making sure I was happy and driving me around and feeding me and all that good stuff. But it takes an army. The Giants never gave up on me. I was in the hospital for probably 3 weeks. I think it was 20 days, right? So I got to know a lot of the HSS people over there and the doctors and stuff. And Jody would come in every day to see me, and she'd go home. And Mr. Mara Wellington would be in there a lot before he came to the stadium in the morning. But Ronnie Barnes, right, the head athletic trainer, and Byron Hansen and Steve Kennelly and Lee Weiss was in there. They're the same guys are there besides Byron right now. But they put me back together, right? I never crossed my mind that I wasn't going to play football. I just kept thinking, what else am I going to do? So I had nothing to lose, Fossil gets let go, right? They bring in Coach Coughlin.
Right.
And so I'm like, you hear the stories about Coach Coughlin saying, shit, I'm not like, he's going to get rid of my ass. I'm dead weight. But Coughlin kept me around, right? He saw the work ethic I had and how much time and effort I was putting into coming back. And the Giants took me out before they cleared me to play again and pretty much put me through like a mini combine. And the story goes like I had to run the 40 and the 5-10-5 and do some O-line stuff. But the last thing was like hop across the field on my good leg and hop back on my bad leg.
Oh,
I remember I told him, like, I don't know which one my good leg is or bad leg is. He like kind of thick about it. But I did, right? Did it hurt? Sure, it hurt, right? But I want to play football. Like, why wouldn't you want to play football? And the legs held up great. People ask me, like, does it, I'm like, whatever. It hurts in the morning, but I'm a grown-ass man. I can handle it. So
do your high school players know about your history with that? Do they know?
Did they look it up, right? I'm sure they do. They're high school kids. Everything's online.
Right.
The ones that love football and actually like really, really love football, right? They know all about it. They probably laugh at me. They probably watch old games and laugh and say that. But I love the kids I coach, right? They half of them are Giants fans. We got to start winning some more games so they. But it's hard to be a Giant fan being a young kid if you're not going to win games on Sundays, right? So
right.
But I'll fight for them to death, right? You brought it up. I got some Dallas fans, some Eagles fans, which I can't stand.
Thank you.
But it's fun. Like we talk a lot of football. We talk a lot. I tell them the stories about when I played and things that happened when I played and the mistakes I made playing. And no matter how bad it can get, I'm the one that gave up back-to-back sacks against Seattle in 2002, right? I thought I was fired the next day, but 2nd and 7 sack and 3rd and 12 sack. I'm like, nothing can get worse than that on national television, giving up back-to-back sacks. So that's the one I tell my linemen all the time when they have a bad play. But I think they know about it, right? They show them on NFL Network. They show enough games and the clips on Twitter, on X now, right? The clips on X and stuff. So they're pretty savvy kids.
So I want to jump just from that real quick. You do follow the Giants, obviously. You saw, or at least heard of right afterwards, when Gates had the same kind of injury, a similar injury. When something like that happens, especially when it's someone within the Giant organization, you play for the Giants, another Giant player. When something like that happens, do you get that kind of pit in your stomach? That kind of like, oh man, that flashback, almost PTSD of your injury. You're seeing another guy go through kind of the same thing.
You do. You feel for him, right? Because it's tough to go through. I know I reached out to him and I sent him a message on social media, and I think I got his phone number and I texted him a few times. We might have talked. It's tough, right? You don't want to go through alone. Like I thank my teammates and my family and the trainers. And he had the same trainers I had, so I knew he was in good hands and good doctors at HSS. The beauty is, if you do get hurt playing football, they got the best of the best, right? So,
right.
If there's any chance of doing it, you can do it here in New York, coming back from that kind of stuff. But yeah, you do feel for it. You don't want to see anybody get hurt playing the game that you love, and you want to play football to the whistle and play as hard as you can play. And it's a physical sport, and injuries do happen, but that's the risk you take, right? Like there's worse stuff out there you can be doing it, or better stuff. But if you love the game, you'll play it.
But it was a real long road for you to come back, because for those who don't remember or maybe are too young, the following year you didn't play.
No.
And then you kind of were, if I remember correctly, for a couple of years you started a couple of, I think 4 games in the next 2 years after that, but you were and this gets into the tight end. I know John had a
Yeah,
question.
yeah, I got.
You have a question with the tight end eligible.
We're going
But
sophomoric on that one.
my memory, which is not good anymore because I'm getting older, my memory was when you started again, when you came back, and I think it was 2007. I think it was the Super Bowl year. Tell me if I'm wrong, but when you were firmly entrenched 16-game starter again, I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it at the time because I thought you would come all the way back from this. And I had, up until that point, I was like, is he ever going to be, did that injury sabotage his career? And you didn't let it. I mean, the road. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is it's not really a question, but it's just we appreciate the hours and hours and hours you must have put in just to get back to that point where you were the starting left guard on the New York Giants again and help them go on to win a Super Bowl championship. I mean, to me, it's one of the more amazing stories that I know of in team history because when it happened, I thought, I didn't see that career arc for you.
Yeah, it's tough. You're right on the time frames, right? So 2004, I missed. 2005, I played a little bit of tight end, a little bit of fullback, a little bit of guard when people got hurt. But I remember my first start back was we played Kansas City at home, and Tiki had a bunch of yards rushing.
Yeah,
200 yards. I was at that game.
Right?
I was in a Budweiser booth screaming. I couldn't talk the
That
next
was an
day.
awesome game. Yeah.
That was the first start I had from after I broke my leg. And I remember after that game, I felt like I got hit by a truck 8 times.
Oh, wow.
It was like, it was a long time, right? To be back in the mix and play every play and just get run into like that. I remember I told Tiki, if I would have blocked a little better, you probably would have had 350. You're rusty coming back, but we won the game. He had a lot of yards. It was a fun game to be at, fun game to be part of. But I remember, I think Jason Whittle was the one that was out that week.
Yeah.
And I looked at Jason. I go, listen, you have to play next week. There's no way I'm walking until Thursday. But baby steps, right? And then 2006, I became the starter again, and it was fun. You just want to stay in the field. I think once you get the taste of playing, like it's fun to play. I enjoyed watching in 2004 because I knew I couldn't play. I was Fiegel's long snapper on the sideline, right, for warming up for punts. I was the one throwing the balls in 2004, so at least I had a job. In 2005, I got my feet wet, right, playing a little bit of tight end, reporting as eligible. Everybody loved the number. I know.
Yeah, that's what John has.
Oh, man.
Play off the number, sure. 69 is reporting as eligible. And remember, it was me and Brandon Jacobs coming onto the field, right? Usually yardage. So I remember I said, boy, they really like you, Brandon. He goes, they ain't cheering for me. They're cheering.
See, that's what I wanted to ask you is we all know it's a sophomoric joke, right? We all know that. But when did somebody on your team start going, wait a minute, they're going crazy every single time Rich comes into the game that it's literally the announcement?
The second time. The first time we always thought it was Brandon because he was in his rookie year, right? Or not his rookie. Yeah, he was in his rookie year that year, wasn't he? BJ.
05, yes. Yeah. Yes.
Right. So Brandon was in his rookie year. We all thought he was cheering for Brandon, but he goes, they ain't cheering for me. He said it. I'm like, oh, maybe. We got good fans here in New York, right? They get it.
It's funny that doesn't really matter, but it's kind of funny for me. That Kansas City game, that was an amazing game. It's late. I believe it's late November, early December timeframe. So I grew up in Vermont. I lived in Vermont at the time. I was doing a sports talk show and some other stuff in Vermont at that time, but I was at a hockey game, a UVM hockey game. I was actually on the opposite end of where my wife was sitting because we had to get 4 tickets, 2 in separate spots, but a bunch of people had left. So I came down and sat next to her. We just started talking. She elbows me. She's like, look in front of, and I look down, there's a person in front of me. They're holding 4 Giants tickets. They're fanning them out. So jokingly, I tapped the guy on the shoulder. I'm like, you're not selling those, are you? He's like, yeah, we can't go. And I'm like, I'll take those. He's like, I got him at face value. I was in a Budweiser booth. We left the window open the whole time. I think Tiki went for 200, but I think Toomer had a ton of
everyone
yards
was breaking tackles in that game. It was awesome. Yeah.
I mean, everybody was chanting Tiki Barber throughout the game. That whole game, that was the most amazing game. But that offensive line, it reminded me of that. I know that was just a small portion of 5 because you came in for that one game to start. But that is very similar to the way the Giants ended 1988, and all of a sudden they finished the year putting Elliott and Roberts next to each other on one side, which led to what happened in 89 and 90. That was the sort of the start of what would become the 06, 07 offensive lines that you became a big part of.
Yeah, that's right. Right, you get your opportunity, you got to make the most of it. So I'm a big fan believer. You might not get many opportunities in life, but if you get one, you got to do it. And I think I did it, and I think the whole team did it really up front.
So what got into you guys in the 2007 playoffs? I mean, so what something clicked there, and everyone always like points to that finale, the regular season finale against the Patriots. But one of the most amazing playoff runs in sports history. Now I'm biased because I'm a Giants fan, but to go on the road
true
and be underdogs. I mean, you guys were big time underdogs in all of those games against really, really good teams that were supposed to obliterate you guys. I don't know what got into you guys, but it almost seemed like you were playing with house money at some point, that you were like, let's keep it going. I mean, do you have any take on what kind of happened that transformed a Giants team that was kind of sort of up and down, and all of a sudden you just guys took off in the playoffs?
For some reason, we played better on the road that year, and I don't know. It's hard to put your finger on it, but I think that's the year we won like 2 home games, right? We won most of them, besides at Dallas, that whatever first week we played them out there. We liked each other. We played for each other. We didn't care who got the credit. We just wanted to win football games, right? We didn't care defense, offense, or special teams. We just wanted to win. And I think that locker room was pretty special because we all got along, right? Coach Coughlin got us together with his magic, whatever he did, but it worked. Probably starting with him, right? Doing it, like getting us all together and playing for each other and fighting for each other and not letting anything break us apart. And the playoffs, right? It's one game at a time, and like we didn't care who we were playing. We just knew we could beat them, and we didn't care what other people thought. Like that never mattered. Going to Tampa, and then Dallas, and then Green Bay, and then obviously playing New England in the Super Bowl. Yes, playing New England the last game of the season, scoring points and them beating us at the end of the game the way they did. We left that game knowing that we want to face these guys again, and we could beat them, right? And we did. I think that game gave us confidence that we played with the best, and the next 3 weeks it's going to be tough, but nobody's going to be as good as those guys. So if we play as good as we did against New England, we could beat anybody.
I know you mentioned earlier, and everybody does it. Woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? We talked about 2002. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. There are 2 different seasons though that you could say that for the Giants, and I'm curious.
Let's kidding.
Well, I'm just curious. I'm curious. For you, which one is more of the woulda, coulda, shoulda? 2002 or 2008?
They're both equal for me. 2008, we had a special team. We all know what happened and kind of fell apart. But I think the last home game against Carolina in 2008 was probably one of the greatest games that I played at Giant Stadium. Right, the way we ran the ball in the crowd.
You just ran them into the ground.
We Eric Ward and Brandon Jacobs. Yeah.
Didn't matter who was running back. We went to overtime. Beat him in overtime, right? That was a special year, right? And then something happened, and we lost to Philly in the playoffs, which another reason why I can't stand those guys. Like they're talking about the Eagles. But that's football, right? That's like a lot of things in life where if you let something pass you up, it's gone, and you can't look at the should have and would have, right?
Right.
We should have won that year. Like no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We're a football team. So
I want to one more thing, and then I want to finish up kind of with what you're doing. So you've been great giving us your time. You mentioned it, and we've talked about it a number of times. There will be guys that seem to not do very well on one offensive line. They go to another team. John Feliciano is a guy right now, goes to another team, or even Will Hernandez goes to another team, and suddenly they're playing better. And how much of it is who you're playing with? You could throw one all-pro on a team of 4 also-rans, and that all-pro is not going to be a Pro Bowler anymore. Is that a fair statement to say?
Very fair, I think. Right? I think sometimes guys need a change of team, change of coach. Maybe it's not their style, or their offense, what they fit in best at playing at that position, or the guys they're playing next to. Right? Like shoot, my last year, right? Sean played 4 games at center, and I played 10, and Sean went to the Pro Bowl. I'm like, come on, he only played 4 games at center.
Right.
So, center. That's a knock on O'Hara, but I love Sean. I love the guy. I think we were good because we played well together. He was one hell of a football player. Kareem was one hell of a football player. David, one hell of a football player. Sean, one hell of a football player. Like whatever, we played well together. I think we were better because we played together. If you take one of these guys off and put us on a bad offensive line, maybe none of us would have played as long as we played. So yeah, I think sometimes it helps going somewhere else, or a new coach, a new offensive line coach, a different scheme, a different whatever head coach, different city, right? You never know. It's tough to play in New York, right?
Right.
If you're not good in New York, you get run out pretty quick.
Yeah, and we got pretty spoiled. I was looking toward the end, the final 2 years that you played there. My memory again is off, but I'm like, I don't, if you look at the record now that we had then, I think Giants would take those, you could barely miss the playoffs in 2010.
But let's
And in 2009, it's a 500 season. We take that now.
I know, but most of the fans had one or two of us offensive linemen off the roster every single year from 2000.
Of course.
That was one of them.
We would take every one of you guys right now.
But I will say this: we gave you an award after 2010, saying you were the MVP of that team. So we did because you played center and you played left guard that year. You played both spots.
I did. If I had service in my basement, I would have had the trophy in the background for you guys. But downstairs in my man cave, and I'm upstairs where I have better service, because down in my basement where I live, the service isn't the greatest all the time. But yeah, I still have it. I love it. Like, that's, to be honest with you, the BBI trophy is one of my favorite ones, because I used to go on your website when I was playing, and you could literally go on this church and just search your last name. And, right. And like, I loved it. Right. I ever, you guys think some guy thinks I suck? Great. I'm going to go prove him wrong. So I used it as motivation. So thank you guys for giving me motivation. Some guys aren't wired like that. Right. I loved it. I love guys talking shit about me because I want to prove people wrong.
Well, what's funny about this is you would get, and people have short-term memories or they don't want to admit it. So I remember back in the day when people ripped Sean O'Hara. They thought, we need a new center. He can't handle a bull rush. He's terrible. We need to replace him. And now it's like, I love Sean O'Hara. I wish we had him back. So it's funny how memories change.
Well, he can't handle it now. He's pretty skinny. We couldn't throw him out there now.
Yeah.
If Sean will get torn up right now. He's too skinny. I think Cream and I could play. And Dave looked pretty good that first week when we all came back for the top 100. It was cool to see all those guys. And obviously I talked to Chris and Sean, and like, you talked to your linemen a lot. But I think there was 26 guys that I played with on that list. Right. So it was cool. It was cool to see Kerry Collins and Amani Toomer. Always, he's a pleasure to see. And Jason Sehorn I saw for the first time probably since we played together.
Oh, wow.
And I could go on and name those guys on that list that I played with a long time ago that I haven't talked to or heard about. And you see them, and it's just like yesterday, and you're talking, you're hanging out, like you're shooting the shit like your buddies again. So it was actually a cool day. The Giants did a really good job, and it was actually really fun to be back and to see the history of the New York Football Giants, which is pretty special.
Well, that's what's cool. Oh, I'm sorry, John.
No, I was just going to ask, and then I want to get to you, because you've given us a lot of time, and I know you're busy. How underrated is Kerry Collins as a Giant? I mean, I feel like Giant fans now kind of forget really what he turned his whole life around when he came to the Giants, and then what he did while there. I mean, he really established a passing game the Giants hadn't seen since Phil Simms.
Yeah.
So I got here after he established that, right? I love Kerry. He was my first quarterback, right? I'll go to war for him today. And I think me and my wife sat down by him and his wife in the Legacy Club after halftime, and we just talked about the good old days and what we're doing. And Kerry actually took me bow hunting out here for the first time in New Jersey when I was a rookie, right? He lived down here in Bedminster, New Jersey. He had a couple spots for deer hunting because he's a redneck like myself. And Kerry was an awesome teammate. He was an awesome quarterback. And yes, I think he did. I don't overrated, underrated, however you want to look at it. Like, I couldn't put him on. When you look at the list of Giants, it's pretty impressive, right? And I don't think it top 100, top 200, pick your number, but I think to have a career with the New York Football Giants is special in itself. I don't think rankings matter too much.
Before you came on, and I'm not BSing you, John, just literally right before you came on, his question was, I wonder if Kerry ever took Rich hunting.
You did?
That was the last thing he asked, but right before you came on.
I plan on going down to by Nashville, where he's living now, down in that neck of the woods, and going duck hunting with him in January, because he invited me down.
That's awesome.
he might not know this, but if you open an invite for me to go hunting, I'm going to take you up on that offer because there's not to enjoy yourself in the outdoors.
Nice.
That's
Well,
awesome.
you guys have something else to come. I believe he's coaching football as well. But tell folks a little bit. Talk about how you got involved, when you got started, and kind of let's hear about what's going on in your life right now.
Well, so I blew my knee out in 2010, 2011, right at Washington, the last game of the season, which was awesome. And I knew I wasn't going to come back from that one because I had enough. So I was living in Wayne, New Jersey, and me and my wife and our kids, we decided to move to California just to get away from the East Coast for a little bit to kind of reset ourselves. And when I moved out to California, San Luis Obispo, I met my buddy Chad and at a little Catholic school, and I started coaching the offensive line, which I enjoyed coaching the high school kids because I think giving back to the sport that you love means a lot, and coaching the next generation. Moved back to New Jersey because we missed the East Coast and all my buddies I played with, so we came back home to Jersey. And Warren, New Jersey, I live in, and Watchung Hills is their high school, and the head job became available, so I applied for it because I got talked into it by a few parents in the community. I got the job, and I've been here now for 8 or 9 years trying to build a program. The program's built. I love coaching these kids. I think every year our season's like a coin flip. If we play good, we can win more games than we lose. But just developing these kids, these young student athletes, and being part of the community and being part of the school. I don't teach, thank goodness. I want to be a good teacher. But I really enjoy coaching, and my coaching staff, like we have 13, 14 coaches, and we have a good time together. A lot of guys do a lot of work, and we find a way to put these kids in the best spots to succeed, not just in football, but in life. And to these kids have ambitions to play college football. We do what we can to get them there, and it's fun. It's rewarding. People say, "Do you miss playing the game of football?" Sure. If anybody says they don't miss playing football, they're crazy. I don't care if you played 8th grade or high school or college or professional. So I think coaching kind of satisfies that urge of football, and being in the locker room and competing on Friday nights or Saturday afternoons. It's a pretty cool feeling when you look at the kids' faces after a big win or a tough loss and see how much it means to those guys. Because I've done it, I played it, but to see the effect that you're having on these young men is pretty special.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, on that note, I mean, I know you've given I know you probably had practice today.
We did.
So you've been up and going for a while. We've taken up a lot of your time. I just want to say we really appreciate it. We look back on the time you were an integral part of for a lot of us, a very big, just great moment in time for the Giants. Things came together, and you kind of epitomized a lot of the success of those teams. You get the work together, something we haven't seen with the Giants organization in a while, where they really seem to be bonded in an identity, and you guys had an identity, and that offensive line was a big part of it.
Listen, I appreciate you guys having me on. I love talking football, especially the Giants fans. Keep doing what you're doing, right? And hopefully you motivate somebody else like you guys motivated me back in the day.
Nice.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, so we'll take a quick break. I want to say thanks again to Rich for coming on, and we'll be right back. There we go. All right, so we're back, and man, Eric, that was awesome. It's a trip down memory lane, but to hear how Rich talks about the offensive line, talks about, you can tell the difference between some guys who played the game because they play the game, and guys who loved playing the game and loved playing for the Giants. And he's a guy who loved playing the game and loved playing for the Giants.
Yeah, he's just one of my favorite players. And I don't know if if he's listening. I don't know if he rewatches this, and he'll think, well, I'm just blowing smoke up his ass, but I'm not. You know, an undrafted rookie free agent who comes in and has the career arc that he has. And we ran out of time. There were a few things I wanted to talk about, and you kind of alluded to this, is why he's has a fascinating career arc is not just because of the injury, but he was involved in that team that was coming off of the Super Bowl. So he wasn't on the 2000 team, but he was on the team right after that. So he was around Kerry Collins and Tiki Barber, and he was around Jim Fassel. I wanted to ask him about Jim Fassel, and he just ran out of time. But he was around a completely different team that and he, because of his injury, had then morphed into a completely different other team that went on, was the basis of the next two Super Bowl teams. So he was around Kerry Collins, but he was around Eli Manning. He was around one offensive line that was sort of a really good offensive line, but then he was around, again, the line that we talk about. And I wanted to ask him about Kareem McKenzie, because I think Kareem McKenzie is criminally underrated.
Right.
Everyone talks about all the other players as they should on that line, but I think Kareem deserves a lot more attention, because he was a fantastic right tackle for the Giants. But think of all the players he played with on, when he listed all those offensive linemen, and then he listed all the other players at the skill positions. He saw, like he said, he played with a ton of guys on the top 100 list.
Right.
What did he say, 26? I think he said 20. I think he said 26.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking with the three guys that he named right off when he came to the Giants, and you talk about the years of experience with those guys. Ron Stone had the least amount of experience, and he had been in the league a number of years at that
And Ron
point.
Stone was a stud.
Right.
Yeah.
So he had the least amount of experience of the other two guys. Glenn Parker and Lomas Brown had been in the league for a long time. In fact, if you remember 2002, when the Giants bring those guys to them,
Yeah.
they were really like, we don't know what we're going to do. And we brought in some veterans, and Lomas Brown. I mean, to say he was over the hill, he was on his way up the next hill. So you've got Lomas Brown and you've got Glenn Parker. These guys had seen the game, they had played the game. The amount of experience and the stuff that he was able to glean from them, to be a backup, to come in and be behind those guys, and he said they were just great to him. They were just huge helps. And then he mentioned other guys you kind of forget. Whittle at guard, Bober.
Yeah.
People forget
Chris
Bober. I mean,
Bober was, yeah.
you've got Rosenthal and Pettigrew. They were drafted in the same draft from the same college. One's in the first round. I believe Rosenthal came in the 5th round, both from Notre Dame, and suddenly they are starting tackles on this team. It's interesting, just the guys that he played with, and then of course going with O'Hara and Deal. Deal was another guy. I believe he was 4th or 5th round draft pick. He played guard, he played tackle, he played center. They put him back out at left tackle, and all of a sudden he flourished at left tackle for a few years. That became a huge part of the line.
And his predecessor was Luke Pettigrew, who BBI had a love-hate relationship with, but I bet you Rich has a much different opinion on Luke than a lot of Giants fans did. So he just played. What's so fascinating, and maybe we can get him on at some other time down the line. We'll see. There is so much we could talk to him about on those other different teams, and it was funny. I think it was funny. I was hoping he would bring up the BBI trophy and stuff like that, because he told me when we gave him that day, he said and I was completely surprised by this. I didn't know. He came up to me and he whispered to me, now I can register and post on your site like my dad does. I think he said it was his dad. If I got that wrong, I apologize. But I was like, I'm like, oh my God, what did we say? What did we?
Well, he's mentioned it more than once. He clearly had been on the site. He clearly had seen. So, but you could see,
we're motivating people.
When he brought up the trophy, it was kind of funny because you and I had talked about, we were going to talk about that. He brought it up on his own, and that the fact that it's downstairs, it's in his man cave, and to him, his own words, that's still one of the most meaningful things that he has gotten, because it was the fans. I mean, it's a fan saying, you made it. You are the guy.
And so all you BBIers out there who said the trophy was a bunch of crap and we shouldn't do it for all those years, Rich begs the differ. So that was nice. I mean, it was just nice to hear that meant, because again, I want players like Rich to understand that he really had an impact on us as fans. I mean, we were proud to be Giants fans because of people like Rich and the way he played. And that's what kind of makes this so painful, what we're going through right now, is that we know what the history was like and we know where they were. And we're not talking about that long ago. This is an ancient history. There's some people that might be watching this right now and go, and they're thinking 2010 when he retired. Oh my God, that was so long ago. No, that's not that long ago. You may think that now if you're 20 or 24 years old, but if you're older, you're in your 30s, or late 20s, that's not that long ago. He was a critical player on that. The only other thing I was going to rib him a little bit about was If you go back and watch the Super Bowl winning drive with the catch, the offensive line didn't really play that well on that drive.
Got pretty lucky on that one sack there. It was, or almost sack, I should say.
You know that
almost
famous shot of Strahan coming over to the sideline and saying, we just gonna need one touchdown and all that.
17-14. Believe it, it'll be. Believe it, it'll be. Yeah.
But Eli was kind of running for his life for much of that drive. So
it was funny, and I was going to ask him. He brought it up in such a way that it didn't make sense for me to ask the question, but I hear a lot, and it's Strahan usually, but I've heard it from a couple other Giants defensive players who said that last game of the season against the Patriots, the last regular season, Patriots going for the undefeated regular season record. Giants had nothing to play for, but they played their starters. That the defensive line got from that game that they could play with the Patriots. And that's something Rich sort of alluded to, but as a team concept. What I wanted to ask though is, I feel like that's kind of borderline. I'm using the word arrogant again. That's borderline arrogance on the defensive side, considering we gave up 30
there were
plus
a lot of points in that game. Yeah, the 30 plus points. The offense actually performed better.
And that's what I was wondering. Did it mean more to that offense to go, you know what? We can put up. It doesn't matter if our defense struggles a little bit. We can score on these guys. We probably left more points on the field.
Fans don't. Again, they're either too young or they don't remember. But fans really don't. I shouldn't say all fans, because a lot of fans do. The smarter fans realize that Patriots team was so goddamn good.
Right.
I mean, that was on both sides of the football. I mean, they were. There was a reason why everyone was saying they were going to go undefeated. They were a machine, and so I always wondered. And we should wrap this up, but I always kind of wondered what clicked. And I kind of sort of see how the last game could have put some confidence in them. But I got my opinion was, and I try to set this up, and I don't think he agreed with me. I felt like once they beat Dallas, they were playing with house money to me. It was kind of like, if this season ended with us, the high note being Dallas, it was a successful season for us. You know what I mean? So if they had lost to Green Bay, it would have been because Giants fans would have been like, well, we didn't win a Super Bowl, but man, because remember, Dallas was a machine that year. And Green Bay was a machine that year.
But we should have beaten, I say should have, it's too easy. We were definitely in a position to beat Dallas in week 1. It wasn't until Eli hurt his shoulder late in the game that suddenly it kind of went haywire, and we ended up losing, I think it was by 10 or something like that. And then the Green Bay game, Eli's hurt. So we don't even play really.
Right, but you didn't get the sense all through the 2007 season that we were on that level.
No, I agree.
We were playing on the same level as Dallas.
But I don't think Dallas was the point, though. I think it was Tampa Bay. I think we went to Tampa Bay and they go down there and we dominated that game. Really, it wasn't even as close.
It wasn't easy in the beginning, though.
Right.
Remember, in the first half, our offense was awful.
It was awful.
First quarter.
But we were still holding everything down. And ultimately, if the offense had really played more cohesively, we probably would have blown them out. And I think they walked away from that game. And because we had been so good on the road. And then, of course, you go into Dallas, and Dallas is stupid enough to have all the tickets to the championship game laid out in the locker room. Whether it's totally true or not true doesn't matter. The fact that it made it to the Giants locker room, and that's kind of the difference, I feel like, of the teams that we're talking about. It's easy to say because they ultimately won the Super Bowl, but the teams we're talking about versus the teams that we've been dealing with for X number of years is that the Giants have displayed attitude at points when they don't deserve to display any attitude, but they never back it up. Those teams, when they were pissed, you knew it. And when they were pissed, they laid that on to the opponent. Now, they had bad games here and there, but we had a quarterback who was a freaking assassin in the playoffs. And we have no identity. We are not a good defense overall. We don't inflict, and I don't want to delve too far off, but that's the difference, I feel like. And so when we wax nostalgic on the 80s and then on the 07 and the 11 teams, that's kind of, for me, where it's coming from. There was that feeling of pride. Even when we were 9-7 in 11, I still knew the Giants could play with anybody.
Well, the thing is, and We could go. This is one thing we may want to do. Somebody said this was a good idea. If this season really goes south for the Giants, we could come on and have, let's think about the past. Let's
let's
talk
do
about these
85.
teams. But even the bad teams in the 1990s, this is we talked about this on another podcast. They didn't get blown out. They didn't win. Like even if you take the 1995 team, which was the year BBI started, they went like 5-11 or something that year, but they were in every game in the fourth quarter, and they were lost all these heartbreakers. But
minus game one.
Minus game one, exactly. But most of that season was all those games were heartbreakers. That were like, oh my god, if this just happened. But and I'm not saying that was a great team or anything like that. What I'm saying is, you felt like when the game was over, you weren't happy, you were angry or pissed or whatever, but you felt like they didn't embarrass you. They didn't, they were in the game. The defense played well. Everyone knew we had a problem at quarterback then too.
Sure.
But it felt like it wasn't like one of these deals where it's like you're turning the game off in the third quarter or anything like that. So what I'm agreeing with you in this is that you don't even have to sort of go back to the championship teams, and people will say this is revisionist history, and maybe they're right. I don't know, but I do. Even some of those teams were lovable losers. The one season to me that almost wrecked me, that was a playoff year, was 2006, because the way we lost the games in 2006, and that's when I was like, oh my God, Coughlin's not going to work out. That was
right.
I was so wrong about Coughlin that year, but there were so many painful losses in 2006. It was the most painful playoff season I can ever remember, because I was like, it was just the way we lost those games, like the Kiwanuka play that in Tennessee. There was
oh my God.
There were a bunch of, wasn't that the year too that we kicked and the Chicago returner took it all the way back for a touchdown because no one went into the end zone? I don't remember, but there were a lot of bad.
It was the you're talking about the field goal that came up
field goal, and they took it.
Brought it back.
That year,
it might not be. It could have been. It could have been 4 because Eli played them in 04. I'd have to look it up.
We need Ray in Arlington because he's got the memory of the memory.
But you know what? You're totally right. It kind of part of the 90s thing, which I feel like maybe we're mimicking in a way, and we'll wrap it up, is that while we have Daniel Jones, right? We had Eli, Jones takes over, and we've stretched it out now for too long. We had that piece where we thought it was Dave Brown. It wasn't Dave Brown. Then it became Kent Graham. One Kent Graham. Then it's Danny Cannell, and Danny Cannell makes it we get to the playoffs. By the way, don't forget, it was also Tommy Maddox was in there at one point too. God, yeah. So, and then it was Kerry Collins. So we had a string of just random quarterbacks and just trying different things. And Collins ultimately got us to the
playoffs. And no Giants quarterback of that group until Kerry Collins could throw for 300 yards in a game. So Kerry Collins comes in, and I think it was his second start. It was against the Jets, wasn't that Jets?
Yeah, and I want to say that was
lit it up. He Toomer had 3 touchdowns,
and was that 99?
That was 90
or 98, and end of 98 or 99.
Oh God, my memory's going. It's 98 or 99.
Yeah,
it was the year before. It was 99. It was 99.
It was before he became the full-time starter. Yeah,
but I remember when Danny Cannell went into Philadelphia. It was the game that Jesse Armstead picked off that pass and returned it for a touchdown. That was for the division, and we really dominated Philadelphia in that game. And I don't think, but everyone was like, "Oh yay, Danny Cannell!" Like you said, we went to these quarterbacks like bink, 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 and they were all sort of like. And then Kerry came along and he settled it down. So
instead, we've got Daniel Jones. While we didn't have the, guy, we've had one guy. But the same questions. It's been like we had the one playoff. That's the 22 team. So it mimics that time frame. The question is what happens from here, but that's for a whole other show. So
good show.
I think we'll wrap it up. Again, we had Rich Seubert on, who was just a pleasure to have on, and he blocked for a lot of angry runs. Kyle Brandt, I'm tagging you like crazy. Come on our show. So Eric, let's call it here. And the next episode that people will be seeing is our preview of the Giants Browns game. And next week we've got Dan Duggan coming on. We got some other guests lined up. So with that, everybody have a great night. Appreciate you watching, and make sure you like and subscribe.